We ready? We good? All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to see a few people who I don't really know. Can't say I've seen around because it was beginning to look like I was going to be preaching to the choir here. So if a lot of you all are probably going to be familiar with this, but maybe it'll be a little bit of new information for some of you. So I've been associated with this crew for a long time, and in all of this time, nobody has ever talked about a Messier marathon. Now, before my time, we may have you done that in the past? Bobby shaking his head? No, that's just not been a thing that we done. Ralph is shaking his head? No. So I found this book, and we got 2 copies of this here tonight. The Year-Round Messier Marathon. So you don't have to do a marathon necessarily during the time. I'm not hitting my marks. We needed to. No. I was going to give it to David anyway. But this book talks about how, you can do any kind of Messier event you want any time of the year. And so that got me to thinking, well, we don't do Messier marathons, and we've got access to Cloudland Canyon State Park, which is not going to be perfect because there's not a perfect place in Tennessee to do this kind of thing. You need a clear horizon to get the first objects, but that's okay. And then I got to thinking, a lot of these things, a lot of societies, and there's a lot of these real official star parties like Peach State and Texas and Okie and whatever. And they have these rules about, if you can't go out on the field unless you have red light. And once you're on the field, you can't leave the field and all these kinds of, you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this kind of stuff. And I thought, we need to do something as a society that's the complete opposite. What is completely opposite of here are the rules and here's the way you're supposed to do it and here's the way it's usually done?
The way we generally run star parties.
And yeah, pretty much. I thought, well, what is more no rules than Mad Max? Which is 2 nice M's that you can put with Messier Marathon. But marathon, that sounds like that might have rules associated with it. What's another M word that's no rules? That's a melee. And so that's how I kind of came up with this idea, and I kind of tossed it out there to a few people, and Kevin jumped right on that, said, yes, that sounds good. And Matt was all over it. Okay, and we practically had every astronomical group in the state to almost on the hit the button for the invite list. And I was like, let's try this once for us just to see what happens. So that's how this title came up. And it's a lot of M's, but if there's one thing I like, it's a lot of alliteration. So just as a little background, because I know some people know all this already, but some people, this might be new to them, Messier Marathon, Messier Melee. Who is this Messier guy anyway? And so just as by way of brief introduction, who was Messier? Okay, well, Messier worked for King Louis XV of France, and his main period of work was 1759 to 1781. So he goes back a ways. The French Revolution was not kind to Messier, unfortunately, but he did keep his head through it, literally. The man who was calculating his comet orbits, however, did not. And his boss didn't either, that being Louis XV. But after that unpleasantness, Napoleon Bonaparte hired him and said, you're fantastic, and we're going to give you a good job. So he kind of went out a little better than his prospects originally looked. King Louis was very impressed with him. He referred to him as the ferret of comets. Messier was one of those people who was just good at it. And he had 13 actual discoveries of comets over his career, which is not bad considering the gear he was using and where he was observing from and whatnot. So he was working at the Marine Observatory at the Hotel de Cluny in Paris. So yeah, 1789, 1781, how much light pollution was there? Well, it is Paris. And he wasn't working with the super top-end Takahashi fluorite glass telescopes. His main telescope was a 7.5-inch Gregorian reflector that probably had a speculum mirror that had to be removed, polished, refigured, put back in until it tarnished again 2 weeks later. When the achromatic lens couplet was invented, he switched to 3.5-inch achromatic refractors. This is a Celestron Power Seeker 90. And that's about what he was working with. And that's what we see at the new telescope workshop. And so by today's standards, that was pretty primitive equipment. By the standard of the day, it was top of the line. Okay? Just imagine what people like Messier and Herschel could do. Huh. I didn't mean to shut it down. Keep it on. Keep what on? Well, but they can't see it. I have no idea what's going on there. Okay. So anyway, we have the advantage of that we have much, much better equipment. Okay, I'm ready to.
We'll turn it back on as soon as it, I don't know how to stop that.
Kevin is coming.
I'm wondering if maybe it's a remote. I do a Star Trek episode of it. Like it would, like it's. Oh, it says. You say, I think not this session may be the choice.
Oh, there we go.
You chose wisely.
Chose wisely. All right.
We're going to waste it.
So, while Messier is looking for his comets, the way you find a comet in a nutshell is you scan the sky and you're looking for something that's not a star. You're looking for a fuzzy object because that's what comets look like, especially through that apparatus. And anything that had nebulosity associated with it got him excited. You plot its position, you record its position in the sky, and then you come back to it later. You come back to that position. If your fuzzy patch has moved, then it's a comet. Or then you can start tracking it, keep up with it. Messier actually had somebody else who was doing the math for him to compute orbits. But after you had enough observations, you could compute the orbit and you knew you had a comet. The problem was he was looking and seeing a lot of these fuzzy objects, and when he went back expecting them to have moved, they hadn't. And the first one was a faint fuzzy object in the constellation of Taurus, and that darn thing wouldn't move. And he started finding more of them that wouldn't move. And this got to be a bit of a problem. Now, there was collaboration in those days, and so there were other people who said, hey, I found this faint fuzzy thing too. What do you think? And they go back and forth, and before long, he's getting a collection of these fuzzy things that aren't comets. And so rather than deal with these things, he decides, I'm going to catalog these things, and these are the things that are not comets. Don't waste your time on these. And so the first edition of Messier's list had 45 objects on it, published in March of 1769. Wesley, you got a question?
Yeah. What is the obsession with comets? Was there kind of
Everybody loved comets back then. That was just a thing.
mystical quality?
Yeah. And I mean, that wasn't just in the 1700s. That was on through the 1800s, early 1900s. Barnard got his start.
Hard to blow a house with it.
Yeah. Barnard kept finding comets and he'd get prizes for it. For it.
Standing keys to take over during a comet. So because somebody died during a comet, so they had standing keys come in to be king during a comet.
So that the stand-in would die and the regular king would live. Comets were a big deal. Okay, so he gets the first edition of his list. Now he had like 43 objects, but there was another fella who had started a list kind of like this, and he wanted to beat them a little bit more, so we needed to throw a couple more on there because you want to have a nice round number. And let's face it, it's France; they like things that end in 5 and 0. And so, a lot of people say, well, why in the world would he have included number 45, which is the Pleiades, which is obviously not a comet. However, fuzziness had been observed. I've never seen it without taking a long exposure astrophotograph, but somebody said, hey, I saw some fuzz there. Messier wrote it down. A lot of people get worked up about Messier 40. You look at 40 and there's nothing there. Well, there is something there. There's a double star. Why would he put that in there? Because it was reported to him that nebulosity was observed by it, and whether he actually went back and verified that or not, nobody knows. But okay, faint fuzzy goes in the list. So this becomes the basis of Messier's do not look at it list. Now, and that first faint fuzzy that he recorded in Taurus, that's M1, which we all know and love as the Crab Nebula. He had no idea what these things were. Some of them, they knew, Ptolemy's cluster in Scorpius. We know that's an open cluster, but somebody said there was nebulosity. Put it on the list. If you look at the numbers and where they are in the sky, there's no rhyme or reason to it. Unlike Herschel, who is same contemporary, Herschel's telescope pretty much moved in altitude and had just very little azimuth movement. And so he was scanning this way and letting the sky move to him. And so his observations were pretty much by right ascension. And so there's order to the Herschel and ultimately what we now use as the NGC catalog. It's all based on right ascension. So you know when things are going to be. But Messier's numbers, they're whatever they are. And so it looks like it's kind of a mess, but this is what everybody wants to look at these days. But when you're talking about a Messier marathon, you take Messier's order and you throw it right out the window because it isn't going to work because it's all out of whack. So that's Messier's messy catalog. All right, so these objects, this is an interesting thing that was observed. There seems to be an empty space in terms of Messier objects in the vicinity of the span of sky from Pisces to Aquarius. There are Messier objects in Pisces. I think there's one. There are several in Aquarius, but in between, there's this kind of hole. And it turns out that from the beginning of March to about the beginning of April for that month, the sun is in that hole. And so some people started to figure out, and it was a Spanish, I could never find the name of this group, but an astronomy group in Spain worked out that theoretically you could see all of the Messier objects in one night. If you were looking through this, you had this one window when you could do it in March to April. And of course you need a new moon, so that limits your time, or you need as little moon as possible. And but it was theoretically possible. it hit independently several American observers in the 1970s. They realized, oh, there's this hole, and if we put the sun in the hole, now we've got all the rest of the sky from dawn to dusk where theoretically you could see all 110 objects that we essentially recognize now. I know there are people who say, well, no, 102 is not there, and oh no, it's only 109 and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but that's part of my rules for the Mad Max Messier melee. Hush. So out of this comes the concept of a Messier marathon. I don't know who those folks are in Spain. So Tom Reland and Tom Hoffelder from the Amateur Astronomer Association of Pittsburgh, and a fellow named Don Mockholtz from San Jose, California, and Matt brought this book in, okay, but Don Mockholtz, he wrote the book on it. He wrote a book on it. I've not seen that book until tonight. So, all right. In March of 1979, Walter Scott Houston put an article in Sky and Telescope magazine. Okay, you want to get the word out, that's how you do it. And then Don Mockholtz got his article in August 1980 edition of Astronomy magazine, and things start to take off. People get into this. This is looking like it's going to be a thing. It wasn't until 1985 that two people working in two different places but on the same night bagged all 110. Okay, so Jerry Ratley and Rick Hall, as far as we know, were the first to log all 110 in one night. Good for them. Do what? You have you start while it's still twilight, and you're going boom, 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 and then it's like boom, 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 and then it's like there's a little bit of a lull, and then it's boom, 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 and then you get to Virgo and lose your mind, and then you so it kind of goes like this through the night. It's just waiting for things to rise. You get the ones that are up, and now you're waiting for stuff to come to you. Okay, so this brings us to a point that I kind of want to talk about that I think is important on the philosophies of observing. Keep in mind, this is starting in the 70s, 1980, and the telescopes the amateur telescopes that are available at the time are, of course, light years ahead of what Messier was using. But we're still not really to go to. It's more like wander towards the vicinity, if you even have that. And so people are using finder scopes and star hopping and whatever. And so there is that philosophy of star hopping, or hoping is what it sometimes turns out to be, right, Ralph? If you're using electronic aids and whatnot, you're not doing it right, or it doesn't count, or it's cheating. I love star hopping. Star hopping is great. I also think plate solving is voodoo witchcraft, and I love it. And then you get people who are starting to use setting circles. You're using setting circles. Son, why don't you just go look at the pretty pictures in the book if you're going to do that? To go to or not to go to. Go to's gotten to where it actually goes to most of the time. Go to has gotten good. Watch out for the slings and arrows because they're coming. And of course, nowadays we've got cameras, computers, and plate solving. And there are people who, and I forget whose YouTube channel I was watching, but it was somebody talking about observing and people who comment on people's methods and people's equipment and whatnot. and he referred to them as gatekeepers. And you don't want to be a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is the person who says, oh, that's not good. You really want to use this. Or it's not real amateur astronomy unless you're doing star hopping with a star chart or something like that. And the problem with gatekeepers is they ruin it for the new people coming in. And, you know, today, literally seems like overnight, it seems like so long since I don't even remember the name of the first smart telescope, the one with the viewfinder that actually had a little screen in it. That's old now. That's from way back in the pandemic. But now we got the Vionis and all of these different things. And now Dwarf 2. And then the C-Star came out from ZWO. And now it's like, well, you just put this little device. And the last time we were at Harrison Bay, John Sadler bought his C-Star. He set it on top of his car. And away we went. And he was doing EAA for people. But there are people who would just say, oh, heck no. You're kidding me. That's not right. It's all right. So we don't want to be that guy. You know that guy. Well, the first people, the Messier Marathon original ones, they didn't have go-to. If they did, it wasn't very good. No, that's not pure. It doesn't really count if you don't star hop. Where's the skill in that? Oh, I've heard that one before. Yeah, if all you have to do is push a button and it goes automatically, well, you haven't learned anything and well, yeah, you know, sometimes learning which button to push in which order is a pretty darn important skill. There's different skills involved, okay? That's cheating. It's against the rules. Well, Messier would have something to say about that. Okay? Roughly translated, get over it, dude.
So I guess that guy just wants you to grind your own nuts.
Yeah. If you didn't grind your own mirror, you're not doing it right. That would be Herschel. So let's celebrate not having gatekeepers. Let's celebrate our own rules. Sorry, Bobby. Okay, the rules. And this kind of came up in the thread on Groups.io. And I went online and I looked at some things and you find, well, you can do this however you want, whatever does it for you. But I saw some that said no go-to and setting circles, no, you go over here. If you don't have a TELRAD, you're not doing it. And there are places that are like that. Okay? But yes, Tom.
I was going to say, what is the Astronomical League's rule?
Hold on to that, Tom.
Okay.
You are 15 seconds ahead of me. Okay. So the general consensus today is just have a good time. Hey, Tom. Oh, the Astronomical League. And we send them money. All right. So kind of okay, here we go. Here's the rules. And the thing about the Astronomical League, don't get me wrong, totally awesome, totally amazing. You need to do programs with them. But one of the things you find is that the programs have rule. Okay? So this is the rule. I'm not going to read it to you, but you get the sense, I get the sense reading this. Personally, I get a little bit of gatekeeper vibe going on here. That's just me, maybe. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But the purpose, familiarizing with sky, well, that's good. Telescope that finds objects that are without effort, not acceptable. It says right there. Automated telescopes includes digital setting circles. Matt. And his super cool, amazing mount that he's got with his scopes on it. Oh, yeah, Jim. That's you too, my friend. Yeah, I know. But the two names I know that are sitting right in front of me. Smartphones, apps. They got apps on smartphones. Includes the unacceptable use of apps. Is it just me, or am I reading a little bit of gatekeeping? Am I reading a little bit of You're not doing it right if you don't do it this way. I know. Yeah, that's true. Setting circles on the axis of a telescope should be avoided. Like they really do you any good anyway. I mean, in short, finder scopes, telrads, or telrad-like devices are acceptable. Okay, the reason, well, they want you to learn the sky, and I am 1,000% in favor of learning the sky. I think that is a really valuable piece of the hobby. But there are some people who maybe their vision is not that great. And it's difficult for them, even with glasses or whatever, to see the patterns as well. But if they have their phone and their app, that helps them to learn and appreciate and enjoy it. And I think that's valuable. Okay. Learn to locate objects without the electronic interface. Okay. So here we go. The Messier Marathon is right there. Sessions where all the objects are found in one occasion. Okay. It doesn't flat out say no. But I think saying is discouraged based on the language we've seen before that means they'd really prefer you didn't do this. You can't observe the objects in that limited amount of time. Take your time, enjoy yourself, and really see the objects. But why not do a Messier marathon so you can use and go to and whatever so you can see where these pesky things are and then go back later and star hop to them, and you'll learn a lot both ways, I think. But anyway, the question of the Astronomical League I knew was going to come up. There's your answer. Okay? So what do we say to that? Rule number 1, no rules. Y'all want to take a guess at what rule number 2 is? See rule number 1. No judgment, no commentary, no hard feelings. No gatekeeping. Okay. Now actually, Nick, that's a really great. That was a good observation. Okay, here's the thing. Boy, wouldn't it be great if we could have a star party where nobody took their cell phone out and took a flash picture of their kid looking through the telescope? Wouldn't it be great if we could have a star party where Clements didn't leave a little early and put his car in reverse and his backup lights came on? It happens. Or a star party where Ralph opens the door of his truck and it looks like Atlanta has just been switched on from a blackout. Ralph's got a new truck that doesn't do that now. Yeah, on his wish list for a new truck, controllable lights. But you know what? That's just not the reality that we live in with our star parties. And yeah, it would be great to say, if you're coming to this event, you are expected to not use your head. You're expected to come and stay the whole time, or and not have your car lights and all that stuff. But wait a minute, all of a sudden there's going to be people who, well, I might have to leave. I have to leave at 10 o'clock. I'd like to come for a couple of hours. And so while that is a fabulous aspiration. No white lights, no car lights, no headlights. Now, having said that, I think there are ways we can mitigate it a little bit. All right? But what we want is for everybody to get out of this whatever they want to get out of it. Okay? It's a fun time. It's a time at a good time of year with a nice little kooky theme to hopefully get new members coming in who might be a little shy, who can look at gear, chat with us, you know. Oh no, I'm trying to star hop to M114 and he's talking to me. I can't find M114 while he's talking to me. Okay? You're never gonna find M114 anyway. Because it only goes up to 110. You know, yeah, somebody's going to come and pester you and ask you about something while you're in the middle of trying to find a hard one. That's cool. Just say, hang on just a second. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, I got it. Hey, look at this. Okay? We're out here to have fun. So, Cloudland Canyon. Matt has worked with them. We've got either Friday or Saturday. It's whichever day looks best for the weather. My recommendation is if Friday looks okay, Saturday may look better, but have you ever noticed what happens to the weather around here after about 24 hours? I say if we got a shot on Friday, go. Even if there's a little bit of cloud in the sky. Now, if it's absolutely overcast on Friday, but Saturday looks better than Saturday. Okay? $5 parking fee will apply. Okay? We'll keep this going in the social chat, Groups.io. I posted something today to float it back up to the top. Now, and this kind of gets to Nick's comments. Think about, if you want to do this, think about what you want to do and kind of plan it out, but kind of be respectful of other people. So, for instance, if you know you're going to leave early, rather than parking in that lower parking lot, park in the upper parking lot and aim your car headlights in the other direction. So that when you leave, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of light, but it's minimized. You know, just little things like that. Thinking about it like that will go a long way. Okay? Any methods, any optics, or no optics at all. I'm going to be doing EAA, an EAA speed run. I'm going to see if I can get 60 seconds on each object and get pictures of as many Messier, 60-second pictures of as many Messier objects as I can with my little 80mm Astrotech. Okay? Binoculars. Do it with, bring your binoculars, Nick. You're our current main binocular guy. I'm really hoping that either Dennis or John will bring their C-Star. Wouldn't that be cool to set a C-Star up and see how quick that puppy is? I think that would be neat. That would be something to do and then send it off to ZWO or somewhere and say, here's a Messier marathon using the C-SAR telescope. And they'd probably tell Dennis, wow, that's so good. Let us send you a free one because Dennis gets all of those things. Nobody's keeping score. Now, I'll post some reference links to books, articles, websites, lists. Ralph, and there are a lot of different lists. So I'm sure in Mackholtz's book there's a list. This is a book that I got for Christmas, Galactic Hunter. So they are a couple from Las Vegas. And they do a lot of deep sky imaging. They have a really, really good YouTube channel. I enjoy watching them. And they have several books.
What's their name?
Galactic Hunter.
Is that the name of their YouTube channel?
Yes. And they actually did a video on doing a Messier marathon, and they've got right at the front of their book, they've got their order that they use. Okay, and I looked over it briefly, and it looks like it starts off pretty good. This is a nice book because it has each object and some nice information about it, a place for you to make notes and things like that. So this is a neat little workbook. And then kind of one of the classics of the genre. Okay, so this is Harvard Pennington's Field Guide to the Messier Marathon, and we've already passed this already.
Yeah, is it out of print now?
Actually, no. It just came back in. I bought this. Yeah. I actually have a PDF of it.
I got that for Christmas last year.
Okay. This says 2017. 7th printing, 2017. So, yeah, I was able to pick this up new. It wasn't terribly expensive. And but then Ralph was saying, well, there's another order if you're using a camera on a German equatorial mount. Because part of the problem is you're going to run into a point where you're looking at stuff on the meridian, and if it's on this side of the meridian, your counterweight's got to be over here. But if the next one in the list is on this side of the meridian, your German equatorial mount has to do all kinds of gymnastics to get you around to the next item, when then the third item in that area is back over on the other side. Well, you should have gone there first. So you're going to get into kind of an interesting little quandary with that, and that's going to be me. So Ralph was kind of trying to see if he could. Okay. We'll try and get that, find that list, and we'll pin it. We'll put it in Groups IO to have that as another idea. Okay. So, what do you think? Does this sound like something that's going to be fun? Let's try and get the word out to folks who aren't here, especially new members. Oh, great question. What time? You want to be, okay, well, that kind of depends on what you want to do. But now some of the items you get really literally at sundown. But at Cloudland Canyon, those items are going to be right through a whole temperate deciduous forest between you and it. Is anybody going to be able to get all 110? No. Because some of them are going to be in the trees. We don't have the horizon for it. But, yeah, a good hour before sunset at least. And I'll put, here's sunset. There won't be a moon to worry about. And we'll put some things in there, about when would be a good time to set up. But, if you're not doing anything fancy, okay, you don't have to be there 2 hours ahead of time. But we would ask, don't come at 9 o'clock when it's dark with your headlights going full blast, because of course, unless they're on, well, see, they need to be on high beam, because deer and armadillos. The only live armadillo I've ever seen was at Cloudland Canyon leaving from a star park. It's like, that one's still moving. That's cool. So think about things like that. But one thing that I had thought of, and maybe I ought to kind of put this down, but like for new people, a really great project for somebody who's new and trying to learn their telescope, sort of a mini Messier melee. That's a lot of M's. Rather than try and find as many as possible, try to find a Messier open cluster, globular cluster, nebula, galaxy, and M40. That's your double star. So that's five different deep sky objects. And for somebody who's just kind of getting used to doing this, that's a good 2-hour activity. And to be able to say, wow, I bagged one of each of the categories of of Messier objects. I think that would be something that anybody would be thrilled to have accomplished with their little department store telescope, or even, you know, a fancy new telescope that they're still learning how to use. So there's all kinds of different ways to do it. And then, of course, Tyler, you still have a couple of ones you got to get.
Stuck on 108, so I got 2 left.
Okay, so Tyler's got 2 more to go.
I got 13.
So, and Matt's got 13. Great. Your goal might be get those last 2, get those last 13, and then go crazy. Okay? And that's fabulous.
One of those is the one that's going to be right at the horizon.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, see, you got them going down in the twilight, but you've also got a couple coming up. I think one of the ones going down in the twilight is M33. It's triangulum, which you can't see anyway, hardly with a telescope.
That's so easy to get.
Yeah. That's what I got.
Suggestions if you leave early. When you get in your car, when you start to get in your car, make sure you have everything ready. You get in your car, crank it up, and leave. Don't check your email. Don't sit there, chat, and do whatever you were doing in the car for
Yeah, that's
20 minutes.